for me, a filmmaker is probably the first thing that I would perhaps look at when I see a new film coming out. Who made that? What have they made before? As well as other elements. So what were sort of the key filmmakers of the golden age? We had Orson Welles, John Ford, Frank Capra, Elia Kazan, etc. I mean, how much power did they have, David? I mean, were they were they still just working for the studio, or were they able to exercise creative control?
Well, the directors were also studio employees. And in fact, one of the things that kind of revolutionized film criticism, and I think revolutionized the way a lot of people look at movies and think about movies just generally, the advent of the auteur theory back in the late 1950s and into the 1960s, the idea that the director can be considered the author of a film. That is, if a director has a strong enough creative personality and a distinctive way of looking at life, that director can channel the efforts of all of that army of people who are making the movie so that they come out reflecting the director's own point of view on the world. And one of the people who developed the auteur theory originally in France, they would look at the big Hollywood studio productions and they would say, has a particular director managed to get a personal point of view into this huge, seemingly impersonal product of so many different people's labor? And so they would look at a lot of films by John Ford and they would say, yep, all these different people, look at the credits, not just the credits at the end of the movie, but look behind the scenes. Look at all the army of people it took who were all working for that studio at that time to make that movie directed by John Ford. But John Ford had a distinctive vision of the world, of the human condition, and he had a strong enough creative personality to channel all of those talents, all of those efforts into reflecting his point of view on the world. So that was fine. Alfred Hitchcock is another one, even easier to spot because he had a favorite genre within which he almost always worked. He made thrillers, he made suspense movies, but they're not only thrillers. They're not just entertainment machines. They had his own distinctive point of view, his own way of looking at the world, his own way of thinking about human beings. But there were exceptions. Most of the people who directed movies in Hollywood were traffic cops who were just coordinating the efforts of a lot of people to creating an entertainment machine, which maybe would work and would entertain people and make money, or maybe would not work and would not entertain people and make money. Orson Welles had one of the most famously troubled careers of any major American filmmaker because he really was an artist and he really wanted to make movies that tapped into his own individual point of view on the world. It is often forgotten that Orson Welles' first feature film, Citizen Kane, 1941, lost money. People didn't like it. They didn't want to come to see it. It was partly because it was the movie, the very unattractive main character of the movie was based on a real-life newspaper magnate, William Randolph Hearst, and his movies, his newspapers, wouldn't cooperate in publicizing that film. That was one of the reasons. But also, it was a really, really, really artistic film. Movies had had flashbacks before, but this was a movie that was almost all flashbacks. And it had unusual camera angles and strange editing techniques and so forth. And people just didn't like it, although other movie makers totally respected it. And it changed the technique of movies permanently. Not totally, but very, very greatly and in a very lasting way. Those few who were real artists, those few who were real auteurs, the question was, how could they get their own individual point of view into these movies? And the ones that succeeded are remembered for that to this day.
Wells, I fully agree, was a true artist and an outlier, really. And to consider that Kane was his first feature film and it pretty much changed, well, it did change cinema language entirely with its non-linearity. I love that you mentioned the camera angles in it, David. They're just. Oh, I don't think I've got the word. They're magnificent. The sense of space is and the depth of field are both just so remarkable in the film as a technical achievement. Just recently watching Stroheim's Greed, which is an incredible film, and I think that's another film like with Citizen Kane. It lost a lot of money, and I believe, I could be wrong, but I think Stroheim didn't work in Hollywood again after that, and it was a bit of an odd casting him as a faded movie star's butler in Sunset Boulevard.
Erich von Stroheim and Orson Welles are two of the most interesting sort of test cases of the studio system. Orson Welles' second film, second feature, The Magnificent Ambersons, was mutilated by the studio. They wouldn't even release it the way that Welles was filming it. He left the country for another reason, and they took out whole big portions of what he had shot, destroyed it, so we'll never ever have it, and filmed their own little scenes to fill in the gaps and release the movie in this mutilated form. It is still a masterpiece. Greed, that very, very great Erich von Stroheim epic, never got released in its full form, which is around 6 hours long, by the way. It's like a mini series unto itself. Stroheim managed to keep a career going, but it was a very, very different kind of career that he would have had if he hadn't just taken too big a chance with too much of other people's money and lost it and just never was able to recoup. So you have these great artists who go wrong by Hollywood's commercial financial lights and manage to keep careers going, but just are never the same and never manage to give us the work they would have been able to do in a system that was less dominated by profit.